A very good evening and welcome to tonight's episode of On the Record. My name is Vuyo Mvogo. In tonight's top story,
Nkandla, Point of order. Yes, Nkandla. Thixo waseGeorge Cook.
But first, Ria Piecha, the suspended National Police Commissioner, speaks.
Should the National Director of Public Prosecutions decide to prefer charges against me, as recommended by IPID, as a responsible leader and law-abiding citizen, I shall fully cooperate. I have full confidence that our country's judicial system will afford me a fair trial. In fact, under the circumstances I find myself in, it is the only just, fair, and objective platform I can resort to. For now, I remain focused on fully cooperating with the President's instituted Board of Inquiry, which shall be starting on the 3rd of May. These side shows that continue to tarnish my name are meant to delay the very crucial preparations for the looming inquiry into my fitness for office. In conclusion, the abuse of public funds in an attempt to run parallel investigations ahead of the apex inquiry set up by the President clearly seeks to undermine any measure of truth that the Board of Inquiry will unearth in terms of the testimony that I gave in Marikana, which further strengthens my determination and resolve to face all the set-up legal platforms, including the courts of this country. I surmise that there is a deliberate effort to force me to abandon my quest to set the record straight.
Well, suspended National Police Commissioner Ria Piecha speaking this afternoon at a media briefing. She was, of course, responding to reports that the IPID, the Independent Police Investigative Directorate, intends recommending to the National Prosecuting Authority that she be charged. We did, as many of you will recall, have the acting head of the IPID yesterday, who told us that they were indeed proceeding, asking the National Prosecuting Authority to charge Commissioner Ria Piecha. Well, we move to our main story now. Two of the main litigants in the Nkandla Constitutional Court matter are yet to pronounce on whether or not they want to continue with the case. The EFF and the Office of the Public Protector are still studying the legal implications of President Jacob Zuma's offer, which was announced last night, to pay back a portion of the 246 million that was spent on upgrading his Nkandla home. The DA has rejected the proposal and wants the matter to proceed at the Constitutional Court next week, Tuesday.
It has been a long, drawn-out battle. 2 years since the Public Protector recommended the President pay back a portion spent on non-security upgrades at his Nkandla home. Various institutions launched investigations. The Police Ministry, Public Works and the Parliamentary Ad Hoc Committee all cleared the President. But this did not deter the opposition parties, particularly the EFF, which went to the highest court to force the President to pay. However, on the eve of the Constitutional Court challenge, the President has made a proposal.
He would adopt the findings of the Public Protector, and insofar as there needs to be a mechanism which needs to be created to determine what is the reasonable cost and consequently what would be the reasonable amount, if any, that the President ought then to pay.
The President proposes that the Auditor General be part of determining the amount to be paid, a suggestion that was not part of the Public Protector's recommendations.
As the Public Protector team, we are ready for the court case in the Constitutional Court on Tuesday next week. I must indicate, though, that the President's intervention requires me and my team and our lawyers to sit down and review our situation. So we can't just blindly continue with the constitutional process.
The party at the center of it all, the EFF, will shed light on the matter in the next couple of hours.
We are in a conversation with our legal representatives who have, always intelligently diagnosed that the situation could arrive at a position where the Constitutional Court hears this matter. And they are again devising a response which we are taking into consideration, and we will give the country and the entire international community direction.
The ruling party says the President's decision is a step in the right direction.
It's not an admission of guilt, but I think in the interest of taking forward the country, but making sure that we focus on many other issues, the President is prepared to pay a certain amount, which will be determined by the authorities, which among others he has suggested in his letter to his offer to Concord.
But for the official opposition, the Nkandla battle is far from over.
He, first of all, accused the Public Protector of being only akin to an ombudsman, which was the first assault on, in fact, the remedial action and the powers given to the Public Protector. He then proceeded to replace the process with parallel processes. And now suddenly for him to stand before the people of this country to say he was intent on paying.
Analysts believe the President's proposal will lessen tensions ahead of the State of the Nation address next week. Aldrin Simpier, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Well, the saga is, of course, far from over. When we return after this short ad break, we ask, have we learned any lessons so far? And what are those lessons?
Makamelo Sekhontse, one strong woman who said no to hunger. She never allowed circumstances to pull her down. At daybreak, she is up and running in the streets of Johannesburg to make her living. After 12 hours of hard work, she goes back home being able to put food on the table. Join me, Bule Molebatsi, on your show about those who take on and conquer life challenges every Saturday at 5:30.
SABC News. We report, contextualize and present news and current affairs honestly, fairly and fully. We consider it a duty to provide consistent, relevant, useful and top quality information and analysis. Our mission is to provide credible, accurate and interesting news programming, bringing news into everyone's homes in everyone's languages. Thank you, South Africa, for relying on SABC News for quality news output and for making us your #1 source of information. SABC News, Africa's news leader.
Welcome back. You're watching On the Record. Well, before we take you down memory lane, taking you through some of the notable episodes of this particular saga, let me first welcome my guests. Professor Sipho Siepe, welcome, sir.
Thank you, sir.
And from our Pretoria studio, we are joined by Professor Lesiba Tefu. Welcome back to you too, Prof.
Good evening to you, colleagues.
Let me start with you, Prof. Were you surprised by the announcement that came as late as it came last night?
That's for me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. No, thank you very much. No, I was surprised, but also heartened by the move, because it has caused so much pain for the president, for the people of South Africa, and indeed more harm to Chapter 9 institutions, and even to the integrity, the honor, and dignity of some of the honorable members of Parliament. I wonder how they feel today, especially those who knowingly sought to mislead the nation. Could they stand in front of their own self, in front of their own mirrors today, and say they are indeed honorable men and women? Let me leave it at that.
Professor Sepe, your take?
Well, I think first it shows that our democracy works. We must also credit the opposition parties for raising this issue. And in this particular case, the EFF tried its stance in Parliament, and they decided that the best recourse is to go to the courts. And I think that should be something that we must applaud, that instead of violence, disruptions, let's exploit the institutions of democracy that we have. And the EFF was the first to go to the courts. And that is actually positive. So that also says, also from the side of the presidency, that the fact that he's willing to listen, even when there has been a political cost to him and a political cost to the ANC, that in itself is also positive. We should always be grateful that we can pressurize our presidents to be able to see reason, even if they may not want to. But the mere fact that they do that is something that is good for our democracy. The third thing is that the president is also being preemptive. And this is a deft political move. And sometimes people say, but this is only politics. But you must remember that he's a politician. And in the end, his moves will be to serve also his political interest and the political interest of the ANC. For the last 2 years, the ANC had to deal with this, pay back the money. It had to deal with Nkandla. And in a sense, it has not been able to even raise issues that affect the people in this country, issues of dealing with poverty, or how it's addressing the economy, that we've been bogged down with one thing and one thing that affects one person. So in a sense, the ANC has probably said, and the president, that rather than let the country to be dragged by own issues, let me accept that I'll pay. And in a sense, it moves us much more closer. But at the same time, it robs the opposition of the oxygen that they had. Because some of these people have not offered policy directions. We don't know what they stand for. We know that at least one thing that they're very good at is to bring Nkandla into the picture, to bring the president. So in a sense, we hope that with this move, we'll start hearing things that go beyond the president, things that affect the majority of our people.
Professor Tefo, a deft political move, give credit to the president.
Well, I would have given him credit if he acted fairly early in time, based on reason and conviction. But this one, for me, is a political ploy, succumbing to political pressure, and all credit should truly go to the EFF and other opposition parties who sustained the campaign in the interest of protecting our nascent democracy, who sought to ensure that Chapter 9 institutions are not going to be compromised at the altar of political expediency. For me, the question is, was it out of conviction or out of expediency? Or is it because at least the writing was properly read on the wall, namely that thou shalt not get it easy in court? If anything, for me, the president, and in particular the ruling party, has really taken a knock in the court of public opinion. But at the same time, I want to acknowledge those who stood up and raised their voice at the risk of losing their careers and demotions, the likes of Paul Mashatile, who consistently and persistently sought to raise this matter for You and I know they nearly lost Gauteng province, in the main because of e-tolls and Nkandla. So, but if it can be brought to rest, I'll be one of the happiest people to celebrate. But let's go to court so that the court can pronounce with absolute finality, because this is more for me, it's more about constitutionality and constitutionalism rather than the quantum, the money to be paid. That for me is secondary. Let's deal with this matter once and for all.
Well, having listened to some of the people that you've mentioned, among them Paul Mashatile, did they, in your view, Prof, raise this issue out of reason and conviction, or were they simply afraid that they stood to lose? Or, I mean, the ANC, I mean, the ANC was bound to lose?
Somebody told me, as a senior student of philosophy, you must have the courage of your conviction, and guided to the extent possible by intellectual honesty. When a well-qualified person wants to convince me that a swimming pool is a fire pool, when a doctor of laws deliberately chooses to mislead the people of South Africa and undermine the person of the public protector, I have a duty as a patriot to raise my voice and to raise my hand and join the likes of Mashatile and others who say the Constitution is supreme and all of us are subject to it.
Professor Siape, why would you disagree with Professor Tefu that when he says this is a political ploy and nothing else?
No, I agree. I mean, President Zuma is a politician, and his actions are largely political. And we should not be surprised when people act in what they've chosen to do. I mean, to expect him to suddenly behave like he's a professor of law is actually nonsensical. Politicians are there to make sure that they sustain power, and that's what the ANC has done. It's the same as under Mbeki, where there was an issue of HIV/AIDS. Towards elections, the ANC changed its tune, precisely because they knew that it was going to hurt them politically. So as long as there's a political cost, the politicians will always tend to be stubborn. But what we also are saying, what I'm also saying is that the president knows full well that he was not going to win in the court. First of all, if you have a public protector and he comes up with the recommendations or a finding, there is if you are unhappy with that, there is a way in which you deal with it. You subject it to a judicial review. The ANC did not do that. So the court was not going to be sympathetic to this matter. It would have said to the president, if you are unhappy, there is a process and you chose not to follow it. Instead, you started with many other parallel processes. And for that, the court was going to take a dim view. And the court was not going to be saying, you are actually correct, Mr. President. It was simply going to say, if you are unhappy, there is a process and we live in a democracy and follow that. But what credit, as I say, must be given to the EFF. They raised this issue strongly, and they're the ones who went to Constitutional Court. Other people were simply joining. But they realized that the best way is to bring this to finality. And the only way that you can do, because they understood that whatever you can say about the ANC, and when it comes to the court, they have never been in a position where they have said to the Constitutional Court, we're not interested in what you're saying. They've always succumbed to that position. So the president knew that it would be more embarrassing for him and even for the ANC to go there. So what you do a cost-benefit analysis. What do you have to lose? So he knows that I'm going to lose. So what I do is simply to say, let me appear like I'm conceding and I'm willing to pay. It is because of the pressure.
Okay, let's take you down memory lane. Well, November 2012 was quite an eventful period in the unfolding of this particular saga. Speaking in Parliament, President Zuma said once that a necessary distinction needed to be made between the work that he had initiated at his home and the security enhancements that were undertaken by the government. He went on to promise that should investigations unearth wrongdoing of any kind, the necessary actions would be taken. Let's take a listen.
this country to believe that government has built a home for me. It's not true. It is not true. Zuma family has built its own home for its own comfort. There's houses behind which were meant by government outside of my house, which has nothing to do with my home. But all of that is being piled on me as having used 200 million. And therefore I'm very corrupt. I take exception because I want whoever is going to insist after this explanation is going to tell me and prove to me where have I used all of this money. And I feel very aggrieved, I must tell you for the first time. You then have leaders of political parties who don't know whether they're provincial or national, taking trips to come and photograph my house and making a laughing stock of my family. I take exception to this.
It is given to the ordinary people. This is what Zuma has built with the 250 million. It's so unfair to me, but because I'm a president, I can't stand up there and box everybody. I must be fine, be patient, wait for the conclusions so that we could deal with the matters. Perhaps that's the price you pay as a president. You can't engage, you can't be a street fighter. We have got to wait that things are done properly, appropriately, by the appropriate structures, independent, so that they find the facts. But there is a lot of unfairness there. Some of the structures that are shown are not at all belonging to me, they belong to government. But the impression given to the people is that all of that thing, this is what Zuma has done. The subject of discussion, there are very few items. I'm still paying a bond on my homestead, but I'm being told it's a wrong accusation. I used the 250 rand to build. I'm paying a bond. I've been paying a bond for years. Now, this is unfair. This is what happens when people take rumors, make allegations without investigating, without finding the truth.
Professor Siepe, I mean, here's a man who was like steadfast, taking exception to being, labeled corrupt, very aggrieved, to use his own words, and saying, it's because I'm a president, this is the price I have to pay, but clearly convinced that he had done nothing wrong. How easy do you think it was for him to take the decision he took that was announced yesterday?
Well, as I say, you count the political cost. This is the same as what you saw in the Western Cape, where you have a chairperson of the province being accused on something very serious. The ANC had to say, are we going to let him, or are we going to allow his challenges to drag the organization? So you make a decision on the political cost. And this Nkandla matter has actually cost the ANC in terms of it being unable to speak quite confidently around issues of either looting, corruption and all that, because once you mention all those anti-corruption, they said, what about Nkandla? So in a sense, I don't think the president had a choice. He was in a corner, that's first, at the level of political cost. Secondly, judicially, he was not going to, the Constitutional Court was going to rule in favor of the EFF. So when you are faced with that, there are certain fights and battles you do not win, and you retreat. But there's something that he has also said there, which he was trying to explain, that you had security upgrades that were necessary. The perpetrators did not say they're not necessary. But what the perpetrators said is that you have the security upgrades, but you also had others that had nothing to do with security. And she said, on those, you may not have asked for them, but I expect, because you have unduly benefited, I expect you to pay a portion. So after 2 years of pay back the money, the man is saying, I'm now in a corner and I'm willing to pay back the money. And you find that people who have been milking pay back the money are the ones who are most aggrieved. Instead of saying, yes, we've succeeded, yes, we've pushed him to, they are the most aggrieved. But of course, the matter is before the Constitutional Court. and he has provided a position. And if you listen to constitutional law professors like Marcus Venus of UNISA, you are saying that in itself helps the court when you are willing to say, I am willing to abide by the public protector. So the court will probably come up with a court order on the settlement. But of course, the opposition parties are saying there are other issues that are worthy of looking at, which have to do with the powers of the public protector. So that we will see whether they will be entertaining that. But when you say, I'm going to pay, you are almost killing the discussion. But the dead matter of the powers of the public protector, when the president says, I'm willing to pay, they are no longer in dispute. But given that this case has been in the public eye and in part of the discussion, the court might be saying, in the interest of making sure that there's no ambiguity, we might want to comment on that.
Professor Tefu, has the president killed the story? And to take it even further, would you agree with Professor Siepe that the people who were taken up this issue are now the ones who are aggrieved because of this, shall we call it, deft political move that the president has made?
Yeah, but let's be clear here. He's making a commitment to pay. Now, if a recommendation comes and he's not happy with it, we might find ourselves 2 years down the line still talking about this matter. Hence, I'm saying let's go to court. That's one. Number two, in the proposal made, the president is also making an amendment to the recommendations of the public protector, which powers he doesn't have. The Auditor General was never mentioned, right? And is being mentioned. Hence, my view that this matter with definitive.
Do you think he's trying to
be pronounced upon?
Do you think he's trying to have this cake and eat it?
Come again?
Do you think the president is trying to do what he had done previously?
Well, some people might find it not easy and not to think that this is part of the many strategies employed yesterday in similar circumstances. But let me go back to the second clause of your question earlier on, namely, are the people who led the campaign aggrieved? Maybe they are aggrieved to the extent that they would want to pursue the matter to a finality. That is, there is an ambiguity as to the legality of the remedies recommended by the public protector. And if there is credit to be given to people, these are the people within the ANC and outside the ANC who said, for the sake of our nascent democracy, Chapter 9 institutions charged with protection, promotion, and the deepening of our democracy should be respected by all. So it's not about money only. Please, let's not reduce the debate to quantum or to be technical about it. For me, there is a constitutional question. Let's deal with it.
Yeah, well, I think there is no doubt there's a constitutional issue of the powers of the public protector. I mean, that matter, let's not even debate about whether the matter goes to court. It is going to court, and it's in the court. So that is a non-starter. But the second issue is what Professor Tefu is raising, the issue of amendment. Remember what the public protector says that the president, with the help of SABC and National Treasury, should work and find out what would be a reasonable amount. SABC minister has actually come up with a recommendation that most of us did not expect, that the president is not liable. So the amendment that the president is putting is really to say, when it comes to issues of expenditure, the best person who deals with audited expenditure is the Auditor General. So it is not really doubting. So you can bring the person, you can stick to the SEPs And that you will bring in the people who have actually said to the president, you don't owe, which would be a problem. But because this appears to be an obsession with those who want to continue, it might be good for the president's lawyers to simply say, now that our suggestion to bring an independent Chapter 9 institution that deals with expenditure of government to assist, maybe I should go back and say, well, I was making a suggestion, but I see that some people want to exploit it. Let me go back and say SABC and National Treasury. It will not change much. But here, what I see is a president who says, given that the SABC has discredited itself, in a sense that it was SABC that looked into the matter and says these other things that are non-security measures are actually security measures. You can't then go there. If you are trying to bring something to finality, you go a step further. So I'll see it in that way, not as a new parallel process. So all the president can actually do, given this, is to say to the court, just in addition, given that my suggestion is being misdirected and misunderstood, let me then go back to say, let SABC and National Treasury deal with it. But the very same people were saying, oh, but the Minister of Police reports to the President. But the Auditor General does not report to the President. So I see it in that light. But I guess...
Professor Tevo seems to disagree with you. Very, very briefly, Prof, you seem to disagree on this one.
No, I'm comforted. I'm not worried by Sipo's position. All I'm saying to him, he has no local standing. He has no legal standing to amend, right, the recommendations of the public protector.
No, but
the law provides.
No, here's something. The president says, I'm making a proposal.
Sipo,
he's not saying I'm changing it.
You listen.
I'm making a
proposal. You listen, Sipo.
Yeah.
I gave you a chance to speak. You listen as well. You are a Democrat, I know.
Go ahead.
Please, all right? All I'm saying to you is that there is provision in the law that if anybody is not happy with the findings and remedies recommended by the public prosecutor, take it to court for review. Thank you.
Yeah, anyway, I'm going back to the point. The president simply says, I'm making a proposal. He didn't say, and actually people must understand what the proposal is. The court can take it and and he was trying to say, let me also be part of the solution. So if you see it differently, the court will pronounce on that. But what the court wants is a finality on the matter.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to hold your thoughts, gentlemen. Right there, we're going to take a quick break. We'll talk more on this when we return. Stay with us.
SABC News. We report, contextualize and present news and current affairs honestly, fairly and fully. We consider it a duty to provide consistent, relevant, useful and top quality information and analysis. Our mission is to provide credible, accurate and interesting news programming, bringing news into everyone's homes in everyone's languages. Thank you, South Africa, for relying on SABC News for quality news output and for making us your #1 source of information. SABC News, Africa's news leader. Get all the latest news from the SABC's online news services on our website. Breaking news and in-depth coverage of everything from business, sports to politics and lifestyle. Catch the top news clips and watch live streaming of major news events on the SABC News YouTube channel whenever. Stay connected on the SABC News Facebook page and have your say on news that matters to you. And for the latest headlines and live updates from our reporters, follow us on Twitter. SABC Digital News, anytime, anywhere.
Welcome back. You're watching On the Record. Well, 19 March 2014. That's when the public protector, Thuli Madonsela, released a report on the controversial upgrades to President Jacob Zuma's Nkandla home. This is how we reported the story on that day.
Finally, after a good couple of years of bickering, name-calling,
and all manner of allegations and counter-accusations. 443 pages detailing what led to the public protector's investigation, evidence she came across, and what she made of it all.
If a public authority's attention is drawn to an irregularity, it is their duty to correct it.
So, were the upgrades legal, and did they violate any rules? Her verdict: implementation failed to comply with laws, and there was improper conduct and maladministration. Did organs of state involved go overboard? Verdict: they failed dismally so. Were there excesses or opulence on a grand scale? Her verdict: expenditure was indeed excessive. Did the president and or his relatives benefit improperly? Her verdict: while there was no evidence that his brother benefited, the property was definitely enhanced. Any maladministration by ministers and officials? Yes. Any political interference? No. Were funds taken from other public projects? Yes. Is the president liable? Yes. For such costs as the building of the visitors center, the cattle crawl, chicken run, the swimming pool, as well as the amphitheater.
One of the things I've experienced with the president in my 4 years of being public protector has been that up until now there's been respect for the rule of law. It's not the first time I've investigated this current president.
The public protector wants remedial action. The president must pay a reasonable cost as determined with the assistance of Treasury. He must also reprimand his ministers for the appalling manner in which they not only handled the project, but also allowed the abuse of state funds. He should also report to the National Assembly. Well, that is how we covered that story on that day. Professor Tefu, let me start with you. Just looking at how that report and how the public protector, the work that went into this whole thing and the outcomes and how she presented it, how would you, when after this saga, when you look back at the work that she has done, and in particular this saga, what do you think history will say about her?
Well, I think she's a patriot. One of those that when you take the oath of office, you say, "I shall uphold, right, the Constitution, or I submit justice without fear or favor." I think I feel immensely privileged to have shared this part of the world with her, and I'm sure history will be kind in judging her contribution to South Africa, especially to the deepening of constitutionalism in this country, perhaps even influencing neighboring states, because her office is immensely respected. And the founding fathers of my nation, when they conceived of Chapter 9 institutions, they never were idealistic. They were mindful of the possibilities that there would be challenges. But those challenges would need men and women of integrity, guided by their own conscience and supported by people like you and me to ensure that they execute their mandate as they should.
Professor Sepe?
No, I've known Tuli before she was a public protector. We've actually worked together in some of the drafting of the equity legislation. So she's somebody I know quite well, and she has been very forthright, outspoken, and she acts on her conviction, and that she must be applauded. And of course, we should not also be shocked when there are contestation in a democracy. Democracy must be tested, And in a sense, she is testing that. And even those who are against her are also testing that. There are some people who assume that democracy is simply smooth sailing. It is actually when it succeeds, like this one, that we say actually our democracy is on the right path. The mere fact that you can have a president who can be forced to change his mind, that's a democracy that works. But when we have presidents who cannot change their minds, then you don't have a democracy. And in a sense, we are still going to a situation where even some of the stipulations in democracy must be ultimately be adjudicated and interpreted by the Constitutional Court, because we are still new. I mean, as Professor Tefu says, this is a new democracy. And some of these things, I mean, even American democracy, you still have matters of constitutionality more than 200 years later being taken for the Supreme Court to deal with them. So it is never an easy thing. So we should not be despondent. Actually, we should be excited that our democracy is so vibrant, whether it's in parliament, whether it's in the courts, but that is what democracy is all about.
Professor Tefu, she makes a very interesting comment. I mean, certainly from the point of view of people who would think that she would do otherwise, given everything that had happened before. She says, from her observations, the president respects or has respect for the rule of law.
Well, look, the president took an oath of office. Like you and me, he has strengths and flaws. In this instance, he allowed the saga to drag for far too long, that in the court of public opinion, there is very little, I think, that he can do to redeem himself. But again, as a victim of hope, I would say it is never too late to do the right thing. Let me wish him well and commend him for this step. Belatedly, but is the right thing to do.
But you have someone like the public protector saying, without any fear of contradicting herself, that from my engagements with this man, from the work that I've done, this is not the first time I'm investigating him. I found him to be a person who has respect for the rule of law. But when you listen to opposition parties, or when you listen to those that have had an issue with him throughout this saga, they say if there's one thing he cannot be said to have, it is respect for the rule of law.
Well, look, remember, there is a history that might be informing people to arrive at that conclusion. I'm speaking as a public intellectual, as an academic, right? For politicians, there are scores and benefits to derive in taking certain lines. But for me, I would say there are instances where he failed, but equally there are instances where he did well. And then for that we must give him credit. But it is when, in the light of immense, genuine advice, that take to heart and pay a minimum that would assuage the concerns of the people, that he didn't act. Remember, even Mr. Maharaj told the people of South Africa that I advised the president fairly early in time that please ready yourself to pay a few coins, because this matter certainly is going to come back and haunt you. And it might impact, right, and really haunt the soul of the ANC. And that's my contention. He waited for far too long, and it has harmed the image of his own self and indeed of the party. And I suspect those who campaigned on this ticket, they will get electoral dividends come elections in the next few months.
I'm going to ask both of you gentlemen just to look at also the other players in this whole saga. And in particular, I want us to look at the record of the ministers that were involved. And I'm saying this also because at the end, towards the end of that package, one of the recommendations that the public protector made at the time was that the ministers should be reprimanded. And I'm going to ask, we're going to play a little clip from the Minister Tulas Nesi on the comments that he made, but also a comment that the Minister of Police made. I'm going to start with Minister Nesi, if we can. Just take a listen to this.
If you're dealing with the security issues which are affecting the president, you can't just release that report. Of course, that it was delayed and raised a lot of public speculation. If we had a choice, we would have released it early, but we had to respect those processes until such time that all the structures dealing with it are satisfied that we are not compromising the security of the president. It cannot be compromised.
But how do you talk about compromising the security of the president when you had foreign nationals working on this project without having been vetted?
That's precisely the issue we're dealing with. That we are saying those are serious violations. And these are the violations where we have people have to be accountable, they have to answer. And disciplinary processes have to be put in place because they have really compromised the security of the president if they did this despite the warnings from the various security agencies on how things have to be done. So it's precisely that we want to be meticulous and even involve agencies which are even having various skills, forensic audit, and who can be able to go very deep into this. We are trying to make sure that nothing is left, no stone is left unturned.
Professor Sepe, here's a man who took more than a year to release. He had been sitting on the report. It took threats for his report to be released ultimately. And when he does release the report, he talks about the most important thing for him is the security of the president. What do you think that did to, his, reputation, and dignity specifically, but also perhaps what did it suggest, about members of President Zuma's cabinet?
Well, I think the public protector was very clear there. That's why she recommended, among other things, that there was a need for them to be chastised, to be reprimanded, that they're not taking their work seriously. Because their job, among other things, is to advise the president. And in this case, they had actually failed. So that's the first part, that there was a general failure. Then the second part is when you have to deal, especially when the matter is in the public space, you should know that transparency is your best defense. And the more you try to hide things, the more you make people more suspicious. So there's also a second degree of failure. There's a third degree, which is also communication. Because if people are raising issues, they're saying, trust us, talk to us, we elected you. So there was that level of failure as well. And the public protector was correct to say, Mr. President, I think you should actually worry about the people that you brought to assist you in this position.
Professor Tefo, I want you to take a listen to this next clip, which is from the Minister of Police, Minister Nati Ntleko. Let's take a look. When he released his report, here's what he said.
The animal enclosure, which is made of chicken run, kraal, and culvert, keeps livestock away from the security infrastructure, and therefore these features complements the PIDS security fence, the MDB technology, and our security imperatives for fence technology to work, and as such, it is a security feature. Thirdly, the soil retention wall and/or amphitheater have a clear security purpose as an emergency assembly point for the family and homestead dwellers. Soil retaining wall is critical in holding soil and substrate, thereby reinforcing the soil bank carrying the inner root surface. This area is therefore a necessary security feature. The visitor center has to cater for, that's the fourth point, visitor center has to cater for the President's distinguished guests meetings and local constituency meetings. During such meetings, privacy and confidentiality is necessary. There are protocol, physical, and information security imperatives that should be observed in hosting such meetings. Therefore, the visitor center is in this regard a security feature. Accordingly, the state president is therefore not liable to pay for any of these security features.
Professor Tefu,
yeah,
what did this tell us about the members of the executive?
Yeah.
I remember there was a big, huge outcry.
And you would also remember how the man was sweating at one stage as he was trying to advance that. And I sympathize with him, by the way. You know, there is a man who spoke about the politics of the stomach, right? I really sometimes sympathize with my compatriots, because right now I'm asking myself, one told us about the fire pool, another one told us about no need to pay for anything, and now the president says, I'm ready to pay. How are they going to face the world, right? But having said that, for me, I think people also took advantage, perhaps, of the failure of the president to exercise adequate oversight. Because certainly the amount spent on that property cannot be more than 50 million. And there have been many experts who alluded to that. So the people who stole the money, who abused the president's trust, those are the ones I would like to see us pursued. And whatever is possible is extracted, recouped, and taken back where it belongs.
We've run out of time. Professor Sepp, I want you to really say, what has this saga taught us? Yes, it's not over yet, you know, but what has it taught the president? What has it taught members of the executive, his cabinet minister? And what has it taught us about ourselves?
Number one, nobody is above scrutiny in this country, and that is good. And secondly, we have a vibrant democracy. The opposition has a role to play, and in this case, you can say they have played a role positively. And in doing so, they will also, of course, exploit it and make sure that they embarrass the ruling party. The ruling party needs to also think about the political cost. Stubbornness is not a strength. It's actually a sign of weakness. And what we've seen, and maybe it's because once you have a party that has been in power for too long, it becomes complacent. But you also see the possibility where it begins to correct itself. So this should be a lesson to it, to say, if you take people, you don't take them seriously. You actually do it at your own peril. But it is also good to have a president who can be forced to change his mind when he's wrong.
Professor Tefu, the last word?
Yes, yes. I just want to link up with Sipho. The Oliver Tambo, when he handed over the ANC, said, intact as it is, I'm surrendering it to you. But please, never underestimate the people. They know better than you think you do. Nelson Mandela made a pronouncement expediently ignored, namely, the people of South Africa, if the ANC should do to you what apartheid did to you, you must do to it exactly what you did to apartheid. My call to the good men and women of the ANC, stand up and defend the organization, thereby defend the democracy that the forefathers conceived and bequeathed us.
Professor Tefu, Professor Sepe, thank you very much to both of you.
You're welcome.
Well, we've come to the end of tonight's show, but before we go, Before the upgrades at the presidential home, many were not aware of the tiny KZN village of Ngandla. Once upon a time, the president introduced us not only to Ngandla, but to the other tiny settlement of George Gore. From me, Vuya Mvoko, it's a good night with this.
Nkandla, 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 hey, hey, hey. Point of order. Yes, Nkandla. Thixo waseGeorge Gore. Hey, hey, hey.